ladies and gentlemen, welcome to part 3 of the Batman Animated Series Volume 4 review. In the last 2 videos, which I'd highly recommend checking out, we covered the first 12 episodes of the season, from Holiday Nights to Over the Edge. In this video, we're going to be covering 6 more episodes, starting with Mean Seasons, followed by Critters, Cult of the Cat, Animal Act, Old Wounds, and The Demon Within. So without further ado, let's get right into it with episode 13, Mean Seasons. Now, this is an episode I forgot the plot of completely before rewatching the season. After having seen it, I can tell you I really enjoyed it. The story begins at a slim fashion show, with this couple in the crowd always being able to get a chuckle out of me.
Isn't it lovely? I've got to buy one.
For who? What did I do?
Once again, I love how that would so not fly nowadays, which adds to the comedy. This event is ruined by a masked woman and her goons, and I have to ask, how many ritzy events have ended with a criminal busting in? I honestly lost count by this point. The perpetrator leaves behind a calendar with the date marked. Her battle tactics are also based on Easter, so you can probably see what her gimmick is based on the title, Mean Seasons. A few months later, Bruce and Lucius have to attend an auto show late that night, and this is when something very interesting happens.
By the way, I'm supposed to remind you about Bernie Benson's retirement dinner. It's this Friday.
Bernie's retiring? Why?
He's 65, Bruce. That's our mandatory retirement age.
I thought he was younger.
Well, sooner or later we all start touching up the gray.
Bruce just straight up had no idea that his own employee, Bernie Benson, was 65 and that this is the required retirement age at Wayne Enterprises. Really, dude? I thought he was younger. It's almost like this guy is losing focus of everything besides being Batman or something. Calendar Girl attacks the auto show, and while we're there, we get an intense action scene as Batman sends this guy flying into the hood of the car. No way that guy's walking again. He then slams a car door into the guy charging at him on a motorcycle. My goodness, Batman. Calendar Girl's real name is Paige Monroe. She was once a famous model that you couldn't walk 5 feet without seeing, but suddenly she just disappeared from all marketing. Batman and Batgirl find Paige's old agent, whom is in a really uncomfortable meeting as he's hitting on and touching this young woman.
Meeting's been cancelled.
Thankfully, Batman interrupts as the agent gives the hard truth.
I used to be her agent. What about her?
What happened to her?
She turned 30. What are you gonna do?
The next scene shows Paige really upset when one of her henchmen walks in when her mask isn't on. At this point, you can piece together the story. Paige was let go of not because of a lack of talent, a lack of good looks, or a lack of consumer interest, but because the studio heads were all considering her too old to be relatable to younger demographics. This is when I realized the DCAU always has high-quality commentary on show business. Last season we saw Baby Doll, who was an extreme case of typecasting. Here, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that the commentary is even better than it was in Baby Doll. Admittedly, Mary Doll's insane condition could at times overshadow the commentary. I find Paige very worthy of sympathy since, like I said, her talent or ability was not the problem. It was something that she could not control. Her own age! This actually does exist in our culture nowadays. Recently, I saw an interview for Star Wars The Last Jedi where Mark Hamill had stated the following.
When George mentioned that they wanted to do another trilogy, I was, as you say, gobsmacked, but yeah. I kept a poker face. I'm pretty good at that. Inside, I was freaking out, but I kept the straight face. Carrie immediately went, I'm in! Later, I said, when the meeting was over, I said, Carrie, poker face. I mean, you got to act aloof so you can get yourself the best deal and not be so anxious. She cuts right to the chase. She goes, Mark, what kind of parts are there for women over 50 in Hollywood?
The fact that Carrie Fisher knew that no other big budget blockbuster would want her is just tragic, but it's true. Older men like Liam Neeson or Schwarzenegger get cast, but not the women. I'm not trying to spout out some agenda with this either, I'm just calling it as I see it. Paige still has one more victim left to capture as Batman and Batgirl get distracted, since Paige leaves them with a giant dinosaur to fight. This dinosaur fight scene does nothing for me, to be honest. It's not a real thing, it's just a show prop, so there really isn't much drama. However, right after that's one of my favorite scenes in the whole episode. Bernie Benson's talking to Bruce about the retirement party, but Bruce just calls it off.
I'm sorry to disturb you, Mr. Wayne, but I wanted to hand in my final report a little early to get ready for my retirement dinner.
I'm afraid I won't be able to attend your retirement dinner, Bernie.
I understand, sir. You're very busy.
Actually, I've decided to cancel it.
Cancel?
I'm changing the retirement policy. You can work here for as long as you can do the job.
This is one of my favorite scenes since Bruce has actually learned a lesson from all this. He doesn't want to be like the people that fired Paige for no reason, so he lets Bernie work as long as he likes, which not only shows that Bruce has learned something, but it could teach the audience a thing or two about ageism. Being 65 doesn't mean you can't work. Being 35 doesn't make you too old to be a model, and so on. Certain positions are easier when you're younger, but with today's medicine, I see no reason why someone who's 70 still can't work at Wayne Enterprises. All that's left for the episode is Batman taking down Paige, which he does. Yeah, the end fight's nothing special, but the episode ends on a very interesting note.
Did you read her rights?
Yes, sir.
Then she knows they don't include this.
Ah! No! Don't look, please! Oh, no.
She's beautiful.
She can't see that anymore. All she sees are the flaws.
That was Mean Seasons, and it was quite a solid episode. Probably not on my top 10 or anything, but the villain is sympathetic, the story was interesting with riveting commentary in the film industry. Not much more to say in regards to this episode. The next episode, however, is oftentimes considered one of the worst from the entire show. Get ready for episode 14, Critters. The plot begins as a man named Farmer Brown and his daughter are showing off their latest and most amazing creation, farm animals that are drugged up to have super strength. I don't really know what that's good for, so let's not waste any more time. It doesn't even take 55 seconds for this event to go wrong. I mean, evidently the show dragged on for an hour, but I was referring to the runtime of the episode. Farmer Brown's practices are outlawed after this, and now he wants revenge. A year later, Bruce is on a date, and...
I've just been busy at work. You've got to have a little faith, Sharon. Karen, you're not going to help me, are you?
Are you kidding me? Just one episode ago, Bruce couldn't remember his own employee being 65. Now he can't remember this girl's name. Bruce, this is your disguise, you know. You're supposed to be into these women as to look normal. It's like if Clark Kent just used super speed to get to the editor's office at the Daily Planet. Okay, maybe not that obvious, but still, Bruce's public persona is really off the ball in this episode. In Cold Comfort in this episode, Bruce said intentionally dumb things to Gordon as a disguise, but when it comes to Bernie Benson's age and this girl's name, I don't think he was acting. Life-sized bugs begin to attack, and that's when Bruce fights them as Batman. Gotta love how he tears the thing's arm off, but they aren't in the next frame, but reappear in the frame after that. These bugs were just a warm-up act, since Farmer Brown and his daughter are preparing for the real thing. I was about to complain about this fake-ass background, which looks terrible. However, it is revealed that this is actually a fake-ass background. So good on them for playing to your expectations. Brown sends in a goat to announce his demand for $50 million, and I find the way its eyes look to be kind of eerie, but that could just be me. But of course, Bullock breaks the tension as usual.
Hey, he ate my donut!
Because of that outburst, he has to make the delivery and actually tries to sneak into their hideout, which leads to the next surprising twist that Brown and his daughter have both taken the super serum so she can toss Bullock around like nobody's business. As funny as Bullock being chased around in a pigsty is, a criticism I do have with this is that it was technically done already in The Laughing Fish from Season 2, where Joker threw Bullock in a shark tank as Batman arrived and stopped the shark. The next scene is pretty contrived though. I get that the farm folk have taken the steroids they made, however, are you really telling me that these two can seriously match Batman, Robin, and Batgirl all at once? There's strength, sure, and then there's actual skill in combat, and I doubt they've had the kind of training that Bruce has had. They all get captured in the end, and I must say, it is a bit weird that he takes Batman's belt, but Robin and Batgirl still have theirs. Since this is the case, I don't know why they don't have anything to escape this trap. That trap being that they're all inside a missile filled with bugs that's going to explode in Gotham and then the bugs will come to life and kill everyone. While writing that sentence, I realized I have absolutely no idea what I just said. What kind of plot is this? I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say this is by far the weirdest BTAS episode ever made. It doesn't make for a terrible watch, however the plot is cliched not even a minute in. There's tons of filler, like the middle where Batman and co have to fight a miniature army of creatures before the ransom demand. And I skipped over that fact entirely because it adds nothing to the story. But I am getting ahead of myself. The heroes escape, blow up the missile, and the farm folk are on their way to jail.
Well, today's certainly been one fine howdy-do.
Don't sweat it, Pops. It's only 10 to 20. And maybe we can find you and Daisy May a nice prison farm.
I basically gave my thoughts already, but in regards to whether or not this is the worst episode, I don't think so. It's not very good. In fact, from a critical standpoint, it's probably one of the worst episodes this season, maybe bottom 10 of BTAS as a whole, but I still got way more enjoyment out of this than I've Got Batman in My Basement or Prophecy of Doom or Moon of the Wolf. Even considering the fillerific fight scene in the middle, I was still not really bored throughout the runtime of the episode. Overall, a weak episode, but definitely not unwatchable. Next up is Cult of the Cat. Catwoman previously appeared in You Scratch My Back, but the big part of that episode was the mystery of Nightwing, as opposed to Catwoman herself. So we now have an episode centered around her. Beginning as she's being chased by a cult of cat worshippers. Obviously, she's stolen from them and makes an escape, with the cult leader vowing to find her and sacrifice her blood while they're at it. I never minded the new design of Catwoman, however, the all-black color scheme really makes her blend in with the cult a little too much in my opinion. Catwoman is clearly in over her head and needs some help, and with that, one of my favorite Batman lines of all time is said to her.
You needed a warm place to spend the night.
Kind of.
I know of one. Jail.
That was just so well timed and delivered from Kevin Conroy. Amongst all the boring chase scenes that I've called out this season, we have a really good one here because of the fact that Batman and Catwoman are bantering back and forth, which gives the scene more character.
I wouldn't be safe there.
Safe from what?
Next question. And you can't get rid of them. They're like old boyfriends or warts.
And you figured I'd save your skin.
That's what you do, isn't it?
Normally. But it'll cost you.
What do you have in mind?
Everything you've ever stolen. It all goes back to the owners.
You're crazy. That's my life's work you're talking about.
All right then.
They get away, but for some reason this cult woman does that stupid cliche where she takes off her mask once the chase is done. For what reason would someone in a private, unknown organization want their face potentially revealed to onlookers? I don't know why, but that 2 seconds worth of animation just really triggers me. Batman and Catwoman are separated as she gets kidnapped, so he needs to find her. We have seen many interrogations from Batman before this, however, never before has he taken someone into the Batcave and dropped them off a cliff. That just goes to show that he is serious about this one. Catwoman manipulates her way into the cult and she's now going to become an honorary member, and... Really, Selina? You're still trying to steal from these guys? In Season 3's Catwalk, we saw that he did want to help and was genuinely curious as to why she would have done what she did. And in You Scratch My Back, we saw that Batman had still yet to forgive Selina for what happened at Catwalk since he said he didn't trust her. Here, he's just as surprised as I am.
I don't believe it. You're going to try to steal from them again, aren't you?
I see it more like teaching them a lesson.
You're the one who needs to learn something. These people are too dangerous.
Not feeling any sympathy since this is ridiculous. Here is this cult that's ready to sacrifice her blood for stealing from them, and she's gonna try stealing again! Even after all the work Batman put in to get here. So Batman goes down after one hit and is used as a sacrifice instead. Catwoman finally comes to her senses and fights alongside him as they destroy the cult. I don't know where Catwoman's control over cats we've seen numerous times in this episode came from, but I do like the contrast as she gets licked by this giant cat right after Batman's been torn up from it. Once the battle's done, Gordon reveals that there isn't much evidence left, cutting to the ending.
Ah, the heck with it. You know, Isis, I had no idea being on the right side of the law could be so satisfying. I guess virtue is its own reward.
I was hoping for it to fade out and then fade in the next morning with all the stuff gone. That sounds like something Batman could pull off. But regardless, that was Cult of the Cat. After an episode like Critters, it's good to see a back-to-basics plot with great character interactions and action scenes. We saw Catwoman get entangled with a similar group back in her debut episode, The Cat and the Claw. This episode is much better than that one, which shows improvement. In addition to that, I think it's one of the better Catwoman appearances. Beyond Catwalk, her solo appearances have never been great, so I'm glad to say that we have one right here. Now that that's been said, bring on the next episode, Animal Act. It's at this point that I realize I haven't mentioned the DCAU wiki much yet in this video, but whenever I watch an episode I instantly go there and see if there's any interesting facts that I missed. I didn't find many things that were important enough to put in this script though, but I did learn they reused a lot of the explosion effects. I guess that saves time. But come to think of it, the reused Batmobile shot in Joker's Millions was actually my own find. Point is, when looking at this episode is when I read that Bruce Timm himself considers this to be one of the worst episodes of the entire DCAU. This might sound familiar. He said the terrible trio from the last season was the absolute worst. This time, I wasn't really content with just wondering. I wanted to know where this info came from. Evidently, he used to interact with the fans on the forums. I mean, maybe he still does. I'm not really into forums anymore. But on the subject of the worst episodes, Batman in My Basement was brought up, and he said that he regrets having anything to do with Prophecy of Doom, and to that, I don't blame him. I'm not sure which of these two is worse, to be honest. However, his bottom 5 episodes is a lot of content I disagree with, since I didn't mind Terrible Trio, and I thought Cat Scratch Fever was an enjoyable story. I would have to see it again, but I remember the STAS episode Heavy Metal being pretty good. Can't defend Superman's pal, though, but hey, that's the nature of opinions. Like how some bear the opinion that BTAS is the best DCAU show. So after that lengthy explanation, what did I think of Animal? The episode opens with Batman and Robin watching the city from a rooftop until Nightwing arrives as he and Batman throw shade at one another.
Nightwing, what are you doing here?
Oh, just following a pattern of obsessive behavior instilled in me at an early age.
You should work on your stealth skills. I heard you coming halfway across the roof.
Good to see you too.
So that already sets the tension high between these two, and we just started. A mystery man is seen climbing a radar tower and overpowers all 3 of them while getting away with a computer chip. This man was actually a gorilla. But Nightwing remembers this gorilla as one of the animals at his circus when he was a kid, so he takes Tim with him for a visit the next day. I like how we actually get to see more of the circus this time than in Robin's Reckoning, which was more about the tragic backstory. Like the scene with the big guy, or the part where they see a woman spinning on a wheel as her partner has to throw axes in an attempt not to hit her. But of course, they're doing it without giving a second thought. Then we're introduced to Miranda Kane, the animal tamer and childhood friend of Dick. Clearly the gorilla is the same one as the other night, so you're probably expecting her to have been the one to cause the robberies the other night. Batman clearly thought the same way as me, with Nightwing refusing to believe it. This is actually my favorite scene in the whole episode. Take a look.
You could knock.
I did a little computer tracking of the Haley Circus tour for the last 6 months. Seems that each town the circus played in was visited by a series of inexplicable robberies. Electronic items, like chips, micro-tools, circuitry.
There's no way Miranda had anything to do with these robberies.
She had the time, experience, and access to train the gorilla.
I know her.
You knew her a lifetime ago.
Actually, it's one of my favorite scenes so far. It was so awkward. Batman is soullessly telling Dick that his friend from childhood has got to be a criminal mastermind, and then just bluntly says, "You knew her a lifetime ago." Technically, Batman's not wrong in this case, but he just comes off like such an ass. Not to mention how he's in the shadows for this entire scene. Going back to earlier in the episode, Dick had a line about the circus being a great place to grow up. I really wouldn't be surprised if he wished he just never met Bruce or had anything to do with crime fighting at this point. After that brief bit of dialogue, there's also a really long shot of the two just staring at each other with nothing but the sound of the wind, going to show just how unpleasant this encounter truly is.
What?
Computer just picked up a silent alarm at the Sharp Alert car locator factory.
That's only 10 blocks away.
2 bears are attacking a car repair shop, and for the last few episodes, I have been skipping over a lot of action scenes since they didn't really leave an impact on me, or they just padded out the runtime. Here, I like how unrehearsed this one feels. Both Batman and Nightwing are trying different strategies on the fly, like trying the direct approach, using the rising and lowering platforms to stop the one bear, or Batman using the water to slow it down as Nightwing rams into it with the forklift. Earlier, Nightwing kicked a barrel at one of the bears, and it just starts riding the barrel, confirming that it's gotta be from the circus. Batman and Nightwing review the footage and see that the bears were far too precise in this robbery, and that means something sinister is up. The scene then cuts to this clown taking the control chips off of said bears. This clown has been seen in the background several times in this episode, once when Dick and Tim were exploring the circus, the other when Bullock conducted his own investigation.
Okay, Mr. Happy, off the car.
He kind of looks like the Mad Hatter, but you probably wouldn't be thinking of him specifically. Now that the mind control is a factor, you know he's behind it. The climax isn't anything out of the ordinary, though. Hatter has everyone controlled as they fight Batman and Nightwing. I mean, we already had the exact same climax in Season 1's Mad as a Hatter, only it was just Batman that time. So this scene leaves me pretty bored, to be honest. But it picks up once Jervis's hat is destroyed.
I hate having to resort to such a base, pedestrian form of violence, but you leave me no choice.
I don't know, I just enjoy his voice acting, as well as his manner of speaking. It can just make basic lines like that entertaining. Leading to a comedic ending as Tim's gonna spend the next week at the circus, cleaning up poop. As a whole, though, this episode was really good in my honest opinion. Action scenes were well done, voice acting was great, the Mad Hatter was always a good villain in BTAS and continues I hear. But I think the main takeaway from this episode was not any of that circus Mad Hatter stuff. What is truly important is the thing I've been hyping up the most in this review. The tension between Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson is at an all-time high. No more waiting. By this point, we all want to know what on earth happened between Bruce and Dick that made him leave Bruce, quit being Robin, and have Batgirl take his place as the primary sidekick until Tim arrived on the scene. Well, folks, the mysteries behind the 4th season of BTAS are finally going to be revealed. I've been looking forward to reviewing this episode since the very beginning of BTAS Season 1. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for episode 17, Old Wounds. The plot begins in the present as Robin's fighting off some goons with the help of Nightwing.
You sound just like Batman.
I'm nothing like him.
Yeah, right. The mask, the attitude, the long underwear.
Drop it.
I'd love to know what happened between you two.
Things change.
No, kidding. You guys used to be the greatest. Batman and Robin, the dynamic duo.
Maybe you should ask him.
I did. And you'll never guess what he said. Things change.
Not wanting to even be compared to Batman, Dick opens up about what really happened. Remember back to Season 2, there was a line drawn in the sand between these two in the present storyline of Robin's Reckoning, but they hashed it out at the end. Throughout Season 3 and Sub-Zero, there weren't many issues other than that one time in House and Garden where Dick's friend left annoyed that he had to talk to Bruce. Things started going downhill at his college graduation, which is where the flashback begins. Also, keep in mind, for the remainder of this flashback, when I say Robin, I'm referring to Dick Grayson and not Tim Drake. After the flashback, I'll go back to referring to Dick as Nightwing when he's in costume, and Tim Drake as Robin. As for the story, Dick is receiving his degree with the highest honors in the entire class as Barbara and Alfred are watching. And Bruce is not in attendance here. Barbara obviously comments on this in shock since remember, that we're back in the BTAS era, meaning that she doesn't know that Bruce and Dick are Batman and Robin. So where is Bruce right now? Obviously he's Batman patrolling the streets, stopping a guy who's driving too fast. I thought being Batman at all instead of being at his adopted son's graduation was sinful enough, but recently I started listening to a podcast called Arkham Sessions, ran by Dr. Andrea Litamendi and Brian Ward as they analyze the psychology behind these BTAS episodes. If you're interested, I would recommend it. Amongst all the great commentary on this episode in particular, the point that stood out to me the most that I hadn't even considered is what Batman is doing as opposed to being at the graduation, not just the fact that he is not there. Batman is stopping someone who is speeding and running red lights. Riddler didn't threaten to blow up the city with a missile or anything, just a guy violating the traffic laws. Something the GCPD can certainly handle. Of course, this guy gives Batman the lead on the case he's working, but he's Batman. Can it not wait? So now it's obvious that Bruce just plainly doesn't want to attend, which is just crazy. He's also not going to let Dick enjoy the night since while he's celebrating with Barbara, Bruce calls demanding that he comes to his location immediately. It's already plainly obvious why Nightwing would be bitter against Bruce since he didn't even care enough to go to the graduation and won't even let Dick enjoy it while it lasts, as he coldly remarks, "I'm not making the schedule." Now, Dick has to leave Barbara behind with his crappy excuse.
Sorry, I just remembered. I promised the guys at the dorm I'd help them clean out the fridge. Catch you later.
He must be realizing now that if he continues on this path, he will be doing this forever. Not doing what he wants, but always leaving early or canceling on his friends. All for what? The guy who before treated him like a kid if it was convenient for the situation? Oh wait, did I say before? I mean right frickin' now. Robin shows up and Batman only responds with,
"You're late."
Excuse me for having a life.
Like, what? At this point, I have absolutely no idea what's going on through Batman's mind, and trust me, I will get more into that as we go. To provide some basic conflict, the flashback is framed around the latest scheme of the Joker. He's great in this episode, but his part of the storyline is definitely not worthy of much analysis since it's merely the subplot. But hey, you couldn't have picked a better villain for the job.
Honestly, must I do everything myself?
Batman and Robin fail to stop the Joker, but one of his new thugs gets left behind and is subsequently chased by Batman and Robin. Honestly, guys, I have a really hard time watching this scene, let alone describing it.
I'll save you, Daddy.
Stay back!
The music is a bit cliche, but we have to talk about Batman here.
Where's the Joker?
I don't know.
Daddy!
Remember now?
Robin instantly felt bad about this whole thing the moment he saw Connor's wife, and especially his son.
Batman, not like this. Not in front of his family.
The sooner he talks, the sooner we leave.
Who would not be able to understand why Batman and Robin would be harassing his father at such a young age? In Season 1, I noticed how protective Batman was over children in the meh episode The Underdwellers and the pretty good See No Evil. It made sense given his childhood trauma, and so he wouldn't want other children to experience trauma under his watch, but here, he doesn't care. He just wants to know where Joker is and is banging this man's head to the wall as this kid's crying in the background. How can you justify this? Batman has resources. He could have remembered where the house was and gone after Connor when he was alone or something. I don't think there's a single good reason to be doing this, and thankfully, Robin agrees with me.
I'm out of here now.
This really is one of the darkest moments in BTAS. Maybe it wouldn't seem so at first, but it has a lot of darker undertones to it. Batman simply doesn't care about how his actions are traumatizing a little kid, or how he's basically beating the crap out of this man and forcing him to confess to taking bribes from the Joker in front of his whole family. He doesn't even care that Robin thinks they're going too far. Robin leaving is what makes him stop, or at least I hope anyway, since that's when it cuts to commercial break. Point is, why did it take all of those things for Batman to feel remorse? It's absolutely unacceptable behavior from him, in addition to the graduation drama from earlier. Dick then goes to Barbara's place and almost reveals that he's Robin, but leaves right away. Feeling concerned, she takes it to Bruce, and then he reveals that they're Batman and Robin, also revealing that he knows that she's Batgirl, and this possibly dates back to Shadow of the Bat even. He never told either of these two lovers this fact before now, and I don't know why. Once again, this takes place before Batgirl's been considered part of the team, therefore she doesn't have the training to survive like Bruce and Dick. He has known who she was, but never took her in or told her father or anything like that before. That just seems weird. I don't know. Thankfully, Joker threatens the people over the TV, and this lightens my mood by quite a bit.
So, if you want to avoid unhappy landings, just send $40 million to me, the Joker. That's $40 million. Operators are standing by. And remember, don't send it airmail.
Following a brief scene, the Joker just hits Batgirl off the roof. For real this time. Actually, maybe that explains how Scarecrow killed her in her own nightmare. But that's neither here nor there. Robin catches her, and then the three of them finish off the Joker. This is a tough scene to analyze, guys. But Batgirl and Robin have a quick argument about keeping secrets that you probably saw coming. But when she mentions that Bruce knew about this already, Dick's anger completely shifts to him.
It wasn't my place to tell you.
But it was your place to put her in danger.
It wasn't like that. I volunteered.
You think you did. You don't know him like I do. He manipulates, pulls strings, anything to get what he wants.
I thought we had the same goals.
Things change. I changed. The game's over, Batman. I quit.
What did I just watch? Batman, what the hell kind of reaction was that? Tell you what it was mad. I have been building up to this for the entire review, and this is going to be a hot take, so let me just say it now. I feel as if Batman's been growing more and more unstable as time has gone on, and this episode perfectly embodies this. Remember how Batman didn't even try to console Tim Drake about his father leaving? Remember how he coldly laid out the rules for Tim as opposed to having fun with it? How about the time where Batman hit the freeze gun in the direction of the hench girl in front of him and froze her leg with no concern? I didn't even talk about it during Cold Comfort, but listen to this line he gave to Batgirl during training.
Dead is dead.
He bluntly disregarded Tim's feelings about Annie and growing pains. And as Bruce Wayne, he couldn't even remember his own employee retiring, he couldn't remember his own date's name, and so on. I think the reason for this is, Batman has been dealing with some of these super criminals for years, and it has to have gotten to him mentally. Batman wasn't created to deal with the freaks he deals with now. Bruce created the Batman to deal with organized crime, mobsters, drugs, and so on. Ordinary people who just need something to be afraid of. And this is one of the conflicts of the Dark Knight. How can you deal with people who can't be, as Alfred put it, bought, bullied, or reasoned with? How many times can you see the Joker kill people with laughing gas, or see Clayface transform into another person, or a giant monster? Hell, I remember the time in Mudslide when Clayface literally put Batman inside of his clay skin to suffocate him. How many times can you be gassed by the Scarecrow into seeing your greatest fears before you start to go insane as well? I don't mean insane like the Joker, I mean he just doesn't react to anything here. Here's what's basically his own son screaming in his face about how he manipulates people and pulls strings, and the only face he can muster up is this blank 20-yard stare. They do a close-up on it as well, so it had to have been intentional. Remember back in Mask of the Phantasm when Andrea had given similar criticism to Bruce? Take a look.
They had to pay!
But Andy, what will vengeance solve?
If anyone knows the answer to that, Bruce, it's you.
The difference is night and day as he begged her to stop her rampage, and the shock of being told they're the exact same thing. So clearly, he is capable of reciprocating the emotion that Robin's giving him right now, but for some reason, he's only standing there and says, I thought we had the same goals. So is he saying all of his absolutely terrible behavior was completely ignorant of how Robin felt? That is why I say this episode and this scene are a model for my theory on his character at this point. His mind is solely focused on the mission of Batman and nothing else. This was the straw that broke the camel's back for Robin.
Robin, wait.
I never put on that costume again.
And you still haven't forgiven him?
Back in the present day, the goons from earlier had stolen someone's wallet. Nightwing picks it up and can't believe the fact that it belongs to Connor, the guy from earlier. That sounds a bit contrived, but it turns out that Connor now works for Bruce as a security guard. Bruce even asks how his son is doing. So, has Batman learned something without having to say so? Well, that's entirely up to you. My take on it is as follows. Bruce always wants people to reform. Remember, there was a whole arc about this in Season 3. He usually tries to help out as Bruce by offering a low-wage job and a low-rent apartment nearby. In the Arkham Sessions podcast, it was argued that Bruce possibly hadn't learned anything and instead is merely keeping an eye on Connor. I think he definitely is doing that, but at the same time, he does believe in reform. What about that hot take I just brought up? Well, I believe Bruce did learn something from Dick quitting. You see, this doesn't mean he's 100% back to the same way he was in previous seasons. Remember, I described Batman's behavior in the flashback as beyond unacceptable, which it was. I had not said that about him before this, though. Before, I was just commenting on being extra brutal in fight scenes, or being forgetful as Bruce Wayne, or how blunt he was with Tim. I was showing that he has lost a lot of his empathy, and that he's solely focused on his mission, but still, he was especially off the rails in the flashback. I think this was done on purpose to really show why Nightwing would quit and be bitter to this day. So yes, he is still showing signs that much of his sanity has gone, but Dick quitting was still a tiny wake-up call for him. But the question is, if Alfred and the Bat family can't bring him out of this, what possibly could? Well, that's something you'll have to keep in your mind since this subject will be revisited in my review of Justice League Season 2. Back to the episode, the ending to Old Wounds is very memorable as well. Robin has now gotten Nightwing to admit it. Things may never be the same between him and Bruce, ever again. But maybe it is time to forgive. And I love how the new Robin is the one responsible for bringing the original Batman and Robin back together. And because of this, we get to hear the Adventures of Batman and Robin theme one last time as the curtains close on Old Wounds.
Speak of the devil. You coming?
I guess it's about time.
I don't know if it was obvious or not, but I love this episode. It was the exclamation point on Batman's character arc of empathy that I've talked about all season long. It finally answered all of our questions about how BTAS turned into TNBA and gave us a heartwarming ending showing that while Dick won't forget what happened, he can most certainly forgive. Yep, this has been the longest I've spent on any episode yet, so I think it's time to move on. Episode 18, The Demon Within. When going into this episode, I had bought into the hype that it was a terrible episode since most people feel that way. If you hadn't realized the pattern by now, I was pleasantly surprised when I found myself really interested in the plot. Bruce and Tim are at an auction, and one of the items is a magical branding iron that was used by Morgan Le Fay. A young boy named Clarion, who evidently is by himself, bids on it. Another man by the name of Jason Blood bids higher until Bruce steps in with the highest bid, giving the iron to Blood since they know each other evidently. Clarion had once killed his own parents and now has access to all their resources, which includes magic. Many folks had their suspension of disbelief shattered at this moment. But to that I say, magic was already in BTAS back in Zatanna's debut in BTAS V2. Also, we know that this world has Superman, the Flash, Aquaman, and the Green Lantern Corps in it. By this point, you should just expect more fantastical elements. This isn't BTAS V1 anymore. I also realize this episode is no different than Zatanna from Season 2 or Showdown from Season 3. Jason Blood can also transform into Etrigan the Demon, since he was cursed with that several hundred years ago, and that curse is how he's lived so long. Etrigan the Demon is another DC Comics character, and so we get an introduction to his lore via this TNBA episode. Anyway, Clarion steals the branding iron and uses it to separate Jason Blood and Etrigan, which causes Jason to start dying from old age. So Batman tries to stop Clarion all the while avoiding Etrigan. Robin is clearly freaked out by this whole thing, which makes sense, but beyond that, this episode has magic and fight scenes, and that's about it. It's one of those episodes. You know, quick setup, action scene, ending. In my opinion, this isn't a bad thing. I mean, we just had old wounds when it comes to analysis, so I'm glad we're getting a break for a few episodes. In the end, I like how Etrigan gives Clarion the greatest of punishments.
What's that mean?
I'm sending him to his room.
I also enjoy Batman's line at the end to Robin.
About tonight.
Don't ask. Just don't ask.
Etrigan will be back in the first season of Justice League, where he'll aid Batman and company yet again, as they actually do get to fight Morgan Le Fay, and we learn Jason Blood's backstory. This episode mostly serves as an introduction to that lore. As it stands, I thought the animation was a breath of fresh air, since we get to see lots of cool powers, and the production value was high like usual. So yeah, pretty good episode. So with that said, that ends part 3 of Batman Animated Series Season 4 Retrospective. You know the drill. In the next video, we'll be covering the final 6 episodes of the season and give our overall thoughts. Not much else to say in the conclusion for this one, so thank you all for watching and stay tuned for more.